Welcome back. Joined in studio with not in studio, on the phone with Howard Galganoff, and he is an author and an editorialist and a former talk show host. So he's near and dear to my heart, and he loves horses. What's not to like about the guy? And he's also very, very involved in the bilingualism issue, which is what we're discussing this morning. Howard, let me get back to this. First of all, the idea. I was just talking with Adam, my producer, about the absurdity of the comment about, what do you think, just 500 and then walking away and leaving nothing but the image of this, almost 8,000 people in this place. That was hilarious in and of itself. But let's move ahead a little bit. You made a run at politics. How did that go?
Well, I've made several runs at politics, and I'm convinced that I couldn't win if I was the only person running. It doesn't go well. I don't want to join a political party. I think political parties have become more of the problem than they are of the solution. Everyone who gets elected, their first priority is to stay elected. People don't have the courage of conviction. They will not say what has to be said, much less do what has to be done. I think a lot of people who become successful politicians all of a sudden decide or discover that they're much smarter than they really were before they became politicians. A lot of politicians want to do things, whether they should be done or not, because, well, now they have budgets, they have staff, and they want to do things. And then you get the other politicians who are in there for a paycheck, and it pays pretty well to be a politician, whether provincially or federally or even municipally these days. And it bothers me enormously. We are, and this was discussed at the landowners meeting yesterday, we're watching our rights eroded right before our eyes. There is so much bureaucracy in Canada, whether it's at the municipal or provincial or federal level, that you can't even keep track any longer. Everybody wants to be somebody's boss. Unfortunately, it's the people who are accepting and being paid with tax dollars who want to be the boss of the people who are doing the paying. So when you run as an independent candidate, and the way that our government is structured now for elections, it's almost impossible for an independent to ever win. In the last federal election, I ran for the area where I live in SD&G, and I raised and spent more money than I think all of my opponents combined, in spite of what Guy Lauzon, the Conservatives, might say. And every penny that I got, absolutely every penny, was a donation, nothing from the government. The guy from the Green Party was extremely pleased and proud to say that not $1 of his campaign came from donations. It all came from the government. 100% of what he spent on his campaign, which wasn't very much anyways, but it was all paid for with tax dollars. This is something that Stephen Harper tried to get rid of after the election was won. So it's almost impossible. The other side is that people want to be lied to. It's remarkable. People want to hear politicians who are going to tell them about all the things that the politicians are going to give to them with their own money. And it's funny. It's like someone who runs up against a brick wall head first and falls down, rubs his head, gets up and runs against that brick wall again head first, and he just keeps on doing it. And you can't explain why somebody does that, although I think that's a definition of insanity. But we do it over and over again with our elected politicians. They don't do what they say they're going to do. Most of them won't even say what they're going to do anyways because they don't want to offend anybody. So I ran. I think I gave a good showing of myself. I certainly did very well in all of the debates. Every one of the other candidates read from prepared scripts. It was like Groundhog Day. There were 6 debates, and every one was exactly the same, except for me, because I don't read from prepared scripts. I speak from my heart. And I say the things people agree with, but they won't vote because they're or vote for an independent because they're terrified. Well, then you're not going to get a party support. You're going to be an outsider. Well, I think an outsider could probably do an awful lot more than an insider.
Well, let me ask you this, Howard. There was something, because you took a sabbatical from these issues for a while at your wife's urgings, if I'm remembering yesterday's conversation. Tell us about the thing that tipped the scale to get you back onto the public scene.
Well, you're very kind when you say from my wife's urgings. My wife insisted, after we left the province of Quebec, we're done. We spent literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, our own money. We're not rich people, fighting the good fight all the way to the Supreme Court, and we defended people's rights left, right, and center. And we just couldn't do that. We were going to go bankrupt. We left the province of Quebec. It cost us a fortune for the transition between Saint Lazare and coming to Alexandria originally. And she made me promise, my wife answered, look, we're done. I mean, you can't get involved with this any longer. I don't want to live like this any longer. And I can't blame her. I don't know of too many spouses who would put up with what I brought into our house. And we're not here that long, and all of a sudden we hear about a French-only healthcare clinic in Cornwall. And I thought it was a joke. Where if you happen to be English, not English-speaking, English, you can't get treated. And I said, wait a minute. I speak French, so if I went there, would they not take care of me? And the answer was no, because it's a French-only healthcare clinic. It's a clinic set up just to take care of French people. So I don't know what the DNA test is for French. And that infuriated me. My wife looks at me. She says, you better not. So I didn't, but I was just fuming. Then we started hearing about the the forced bilingual sign laws in places like Clarence, Rockland, and Castleman. And I looked at Anne, and she looks at me, and I start getting all kinds of phone calls and emails. What are you going to do about it? Because of my past reputation. And Anne says, you better not. And I said, okay, I won't. But it was killing me nonetheless. Then my wife picked up a book that she had read before we're married. On May 1st, it's 36 years that we're married. So she read this book maybe 37, 38 years ago, before we were married, and was Atlas Shrugged. And it was written perhaps 60 years ago by Ayn Rand, and it was a fiction, except that fiction is coming true. It's all about what we're seeing happening now in Canada and the United States, about how the left is taking over our entire society, where the people who put up nothing are the ones who want everything. And Anne's reading this book, and she's getting angrier and angrier every moment. She says, we're living this. And Anne's a very, very bright person. She's probably a lot smarter than I'll ever be. And she never really got her mind around left and right. But this book really focused her attention. And then one of our employees came to work late one day, and I asked her why she was late. And it was just a joke, really, with her. She was really a nice lady. And she said, look, she had to drive her daughter to school. I said, why? Did she sleep in? She said, no, she missed the bus. I said, so she must have slept in. She said, no, she wasn't allowed on the bus. I said, well, what do you mean she wasn't allowed on the bus? She's a nice kid. I couldn't think of anything she would do. She said, well, we missed the English bus, and the French bus wouldn't take her. I said, what are you talking about? And I was on my way out, and it bothered me, but I didn't think about it that much because I didn't understand what she was saying. It didn't make sense to me. And then a week later, I was at a friend's house, a French friend who drives a school bus to augment his farm income. And I asked him, I said, how come your bus is half the size? What happened to your big bus? He says, oh, I'm not allowed to carry English kids any longer. I said, I don't believe. Now, his kids go to an English school, so he has to get special dispensation to carry his own English kids. And what they did in Alexandria is that they've passed some kind of regulation amongst the French schools and the teachers and the parents. They didn't want English kids on their bus, period. So they kicked off all the English kids, so they've segregated their bus. Martin Luther King died fighting segregation. All the leftists were up in arms fighting segregation anywhere and everywhere. And here we are in the 21st century, in the year 2000, and I don't know, maybe it was 2005 or 6 at the time. And wham, here we are in the middle of segregation, and no one says a word. Can you imagine, Nick, if we had English-only healthcare clinics, or we said we're going to pass a Bill 101 for Ontario in reverse to Quebec? In other words, French becomes an illegal language. You can't put up French signs, or French has to be half as many or half the size. Or we're not going to hire any French people to the Ontario civil service like Quebec. In Quebec, less than 3/4 of 1%. So it's not even 1% of the Quebec civil service, which is the largest in North America on a per capita basis, have English speakers. And I'm not talking about people who can't speak French. If you're perfectly bilingual but you're English, you're not getting a job in Quebec civil service. So imagine the outrage in Ontario if we had these things. English-only healthcare clinics. French people don't even bother applying for a job in any level of the civil service. And now you have segregated school buses where French kids can't come on the bus because, God forbid, their language will pollute the ears of the English kids. And that's what's happening in Ontario, and we accept it. No problem. This is sick.
Howard, I'm going to hold you